It is Wednesday, October 2nd, 2024. Good evening and welcome to Night Talk, Episode 3, live from Montreal. Tonight, an update on one of three provincial election campaigns now underway across the country, an overview of last night's U.S. vice presidential debate, and the silly season continues in Ottawa. Now, as mentioned, there are three provincial election campaigns underway in BC, Saskatchewan, and New Brunswick. For an update on the New Brunswick campaign tonight, I'm joined by my brother Wayne from his home in Fredericton. Now, Wayne, the campaign has been interesting for a number of reasons, including Conservative leader Blaine Higgs being ranked as the least popular premier in the country on the day the writ was dropped, and the approach he's taking to campaign promises. Can you fill us in as to what's been happening over the last little while?
Sure, Gary. The Just to fill in what you said there, the interesting thing is that the major promise that Premier Higgs has made is that he's going to cut the harmonized sales tax by 2 points from 15 to 13%. That's the major campaign promise he's made. It's the major expenditure. I don't know what the figures eventually work out to be. He's made a few other announcements by building 6,000 homes per year for the next 5 years for a total of 30,000 by 2030. He's going to expand the scope of practice of nurses, nurse practitioners, pharmacists, paramedics, and other medical professionals to take the load off physicians. He also wants to make financial literacy part of the school curriculum with lessons in subjects such as budgeting, bank accounts, interest rates, inflation, mortgages, that kind of thing. And he wants to, of course, renew the legal challenge against the federal carbon pricing scheme. So those things don't seem to cost a lot of money. The big one would be the cutting our harmonized sales tax by 2 points. In fact, that appears as the one of the major illustrations on his campaign bus. The other two major parties, the Liberals and the Greens, have made a number of promises, all with costs associated, and so it's quite a difference. Now, as one political scientist at one of the universities, I can't remember which one, had said recently, when you make one major announcement that involves money and you've got a 30-day election, you got a lot of space to fill in. So a lot of his time is spent talking about the other parties and their promises and how much they either cost or maybe whatever, how shallow they are. So that's one point. The other interesting thing is being the least popular premier in the province at the time of the announcement, and having gone through the turmoil that he went through towards the end of last year, sitting at the House with I think 4 cabinet ministers resigning and publicly stating that it was basically because of his leadership style and how he dealt with caucus and cabinet. And then he had other cabinet ministers that just when the House adjourned, they just said we're not running again. So there's been a pretty large exodus of experience and talent from his caucus, and you would expect that would be an opportunity in the making for, in this case, I would say the Liberals to make some significant inroads. The interesting thing is, and I haven't seen a whole lot of polls. The only poll that I've been looking at regularly is poll 338, which everybody can access on the web. But they still have this as a close race. In fact, I think they updated it last Thursday, and they are seeing this still, as of that date, that they're projecting a 1-seat lead by Higgs over the Liberals, and the Greens a little farther back. So that's kind of the overall update. The interesting thing in terms of the writings of the three leaders, Blaine Higgs and his writing, the poll 338 is projecting that's pretty safe for him. The Liberal leader, Susan Holt, is running here in the Fredericton area this time, and her numbers I think were a little slow at the first, but they've picked up when I look at poll 338, and I kind of get that feeling just by talking to people. Um, and she has taken a slight lead over Nicole Carlin, who's running for the Progressive Conservatives, and who had worked in Blaine Higgs' office as, I think, the chief of communications or um, the deputy minister of communications, something along those lines. Anyway, and the Green candidate is a little farther back. Interestingly enough, at the last election, the Conservative member that won, Dominic Carty, became the education minister and then left cabinet and then had to sit as an independent. Um, he finished with like 50 some percent of the popular vote, and the Green candidate finished second over the Liberal. So um, right now it's kind of neck and neck as far as poll 338 is concerned between Holt and the Conservative member. David Kuhn is the leader of the Green Party, who's won his seat, I think, about 4 elections in a row now, and won it usually quite handily. He was located in the center of Fredericton, downtown Fredericton, had a strong power base, but then they realigned the electoral boundaries for the province, and his his home riding, if you want to call it, his base riding is split in half. So the half he's running in extends into a part of outside of Fredericton, which often votes conservative. So he's running neck and neck with the conservative candidate there, and so two of the leaders seem to be in a pretty tight contest. Higgs, at least projected by poll 338, seems to be pretty safe in his seat.
Now, you mentioned some of the ridings have been redrawn, and you also have a growth in population that hasn't been seen for years in New Brunswick, that growth in population coming through the pandemic and after the pandemic. But a lot of those people seem to have settled in the Moncton area, where a number of the ridings coincidentally have been redrawn. So I guess that would kind of throw old traditions or voting patterns out the window.
Well, yeah, I think one would assume that. The four main ridings in Moncton, I think four. I'll say four. There's more than, but they were all conservative last time, safely conservative, fairly safely conservative. Poll 338, which is my only source to this point, is showing two of those are still safe conservative, but two of them are getting to be very close and either a toss up or leaning one way or the other, but not clear who's actually going to come out on top. And so it looks like the Liberals have an opportunity there, the way the current polls are, to perhaps take one or two of those seats. Um, and I think the thing to remember is the election was only called almost 2 weeks ago, and we still have to the 21st, which is about 2.5, almost 3 weeks to go. So it's still relatively early. I wouldn't say we're halfway through yet, and already, if I look at the trends in the poll 338 metrics that they show, the Liberals have sort of had an upswing in the last week, and the Conservatives have either plateaued um, or maybe dropped a bit, but not a lot. I was looking at some of the metrics, and they're either kind of holding their own in a lot of cases, maybe slight drop, and in some cases they've even increased. So I think we need to see how the next 3 weeks play out to get obviously another week or two to get a better feel as to what's shaking on here, because it still is billed as a very, very close election. And I would have thought, personally, having been around for a number of years and seen a number of elections, seeing premiers that aren't particularly popular and the least popular in the country, that's usually the opportunity for the other party. I'll say the other party is usually Conservatives or Liberals that are elected here. Greens in the last election made significant inroads through the province and finished second in a lot of ridings. And this year they're hoping to even do the same and elect more members in the House. And so I think we need to see a little longer how this is playing out. I'm not sure how many more promises can be given out by the Greens and the Liberals. I'm not sure the costing factor with all of them, but it's every day there's another announcement. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. And I think the effect that the new population has, I guess it depends on where they you know where they came from, what their current feelings are. Maybe they're loyal to one party or the other party, no matter where they live, or they want to see who's doing what for them in this province. And I guess the other point is how many of them are really have melded into our society to the point that they have a real interest in this election, and I hope they do, and that's the unknown factor. Like, how are they going to influence the election?
Now, if I understand it correctly, both the Conservatives and the Liberals have a full slate of 49 candidates. And what I have picked up on is the Conservatives were shy 3 to 4, maybe 5 candidates right up until the very last day, which was yesterday, for getting the names
Yeah,
in of candidates. And they
yeah.
came in
Yesterday,
at, yeah, go ahead.
okay, yesterday was the last day, and they finalized their slate. You had to submit all your papers and things to Elections NB, and the final three got approved yesterday. So to me, that's a little unusual for all the years I spent in New Brunswick to have one of the major parties in the governing party take to the last day to get their slate full. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I know there's been talk and there's been articles in the media that some of the um, writing associations weren't happy with how things were being handled, and as you know, a number of the writing association presidents tried last spring or summer to get a leadership review of Premier Higgs. So I think there's some um, disarray, we'll call it, I guess, in some of the writings in the province with the Conservatives, but they seem to have pulled enough together, and they certainly got their full slate of candidates.
Now, we've mentioned the Conservatives, the Liberals, and the Green Party. One party that seems to be missing here, although I do understand they have at least some candidates nominated, is the New Democratic Party. They seem to have just sort of faded completely.
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't even know how many candidates they have running, and quite frankly, and maybe it's my doing, I couldn't tell you who their leader is, but they do have signs around. In terms of vote NDP, sometimes with no candidate mentioned. I did see a sign in downtown Fredericton today for an actual candidate, but yeah, I think the number that they have is small, and now how much interest they'll gain from former NDP members or hardcore NDP members, I don't know. Will they have an impact on the election? I, I I don't know that either. I think the main impact is going to come with how much how much impact the Greens will have, because in the last election the votes they tended to take were from the Liberals, and that allowed them to finish second, the Liberals maybe third, or they finished a strong third to the Liberals, and the Conservative members benefit from that, obviously. But the other part, of course, is the People Alliance. They're back. They have some candidates as well, and again, the percentage of popular vote based on 338, they're not they're not scoring very high on that either. So yeah, so there we are. We got five parties. Obviously three are major players. Two are the major players. So we'll see how it goes. Um, I noticed, yeah, I noticed that, and maybe it's just me, but I noticed that the Green Party, in terms of advertisements. I've heard and seen more of advertisements, to my recollection, than in other years. Even on the power hour of between 5 and 6 on the most watched news broadcast in New Brunswick. I've seen green advertisements, which maybe they're there before and I just don't remember. But I think they're stepping up their game.
I've noticed on social media platforms that some of the conservative candidates, especially in the southern area of the province, a lot of people are questioning these people and their choice. Somewhat unconventional, if you will, I guess would be the best way of describing it. Do you think that's going to have any kind of a play here at this point?
Well, I think you're referring to one writing in particular, which had there was a little bit of controversy in terms of the selection of the candidate, or how the candidate was selected, or the bowing out of the candidate that the outgoing member who was retired had had put his finger on as the replacement. Things didn't pan out, and he eventually just withdrew. So there was something going on there. The details are a little fuzzy to me right now, but it didn't work out for him, and he withdrew. And it left the door open for an individual who has her own show. She's been classified in the media as a right-wing Christian conservative, and with views that go along with that. And the person that the Liberals chose to run against her is a former Conservative member of Parliament federally, and he said he just he couldn't stand by and not step in and run. So, but surprisingly, again, my source is poll 338. They're calling that a safe Conservative seat. Now that has been Conservative for years and years and years and years. I mean, it's maybe it's a very safe Conservative seat. That may have something to do with it. The issue of the gender policy in schools certainly is divisive, and it the Conservatives are saying it's going to preserve the right of parents to have a say in how their children are brought up, or whatever term you want to use, and others are saying it's going to not be particularly a good thing for those individuals that are going to school, that maybe if they expressed their gender identities to their parents, it may not work out well. So it's obviously a divisive situation, and so we'll see how that goes. I don't know how to comment any more than that. Seems to be has been a Conservative seat for many years, and is always considered a safe Conservative seat. So, and poll 338 has that. Again, the numbers are pretty high for the Conservative person running in that particular riding.
And as you say, there's a former Conservative cabinet minister running for the Liberals in Quispam-Sis, Blaine Higgs riding. A former Conservative minister in the Bernard Lord government came out in full support of the Liberal candidate challenging Higgs, and that's Aaron Kennedy. Mm-hmm. How much of an impact that's going to have, I'm not sure. But I know that Brenda Fowley is the former cabinet minister who came out in support of Kennedy. And also a former executive assistant for Conservative ministers in the Higgs government has come out in support. He says he can't vote for Blaine Higgs for a number of reasons. So he's going to be voting Liberal, and Liberal would be that candidate, Aaron Kennedy. So that's an interesting dynamic in Higgs' backyard, really.
It sure is. And I looked at poll 338 again. That's my only source. And how accurate it is, I don't know. I just know I looked at it the last couple of elections, and I found them to be pretty good at predicting things. Gary, you've looked at it too. I don't know what your thoughts about it are, but they still have that pretty safe for Higgs in Quispam. Whether that plays out in the next 2.5, almost 3 weeks, we'll see. I think there's a bit of a trend for Aaron Kennedy on the upswing. I'm sure his internal polls would give us a better, clearer picture. But according to poll 3.3, he's got a lot of catching up to do. So um, yeah, again, it's only just almost 2 weeks in, and you got almost 3 weeks to go. So a lot of things can happen in that time period.
Yeah, that's for sure, especially with an election that is, or at least at this point, that tight, where really, when you take into consideration the percentage of error on the polls, I saw one poll just shortly after the writ was dropped, and it showed the Liberals with a slight lead, but not really, because when you factor in the percentage of error, it was virtually a dead heat at that point between the Holt-led Liberals and the Higgs-led Conservatives.
Yeah, so I guess it's all going to play out on the old hustings on the campaign trail, and I said, for a short election of 4.5 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever, um, there's still lots of time to go, and we'll see. Be interested to see if there's going to be any separation in the polls between the big two parties, the Liberals and Conservatives, as time goes on. Um, the undecided factor is I forget the percentage, but I think it's up there. And as they make up their minds, then we may see how things are actually going to, a better idea of how things are going to look. I don't know. Did you see in the poll you saw? Did you determine the undecided factor? I can't recall.
No, I don't remember what the undecided. It seemed to me it was quite high at that point, but I just don't remember the actual number. And
Yeah,
when you think about it, coming off summer, back to school and getting back into the regular routine, the various organizations you're a member of or serving on or whatever.
yeah.
Those first 2 weeks or so of September are usually very busy, and that's what you're focused on more than anything. But I think probably if we start getting some polling in by the end of this week, we should perhaps start to see a bit of a trend, I would think, as to where this may be going, and also where, what the undecided factor, just how large it is, and whether there's any sort of a shift in that as to where they're going to place their X's when it comes time to vote. And election day is the 19th, October 19th?
21st.
October 21st, okay.
Yeah.
I think 19th, I think, is British Columbia. And Saskatchewan is 2 days after, or a day after the New Brunswick date as well. Okay, Wayne, well, it's been interesting to get some updates on what's happening in New Brunswick at this stage of the game as we approach. Basically, we're approaching the halfway mark of that campaign. And given the controversy that Higgs has been involved in over the gender policy in the schools, and also the revolt of some of the cabinet ministers and government members as well, which he seemed to be able to keep control of, and so it didn't do a lot of damage at that point. It's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out overall. And we'll be checking in with you from time to time to see what's happening. And I want to thank you for coming on tonight and bringing us up to date.
Oh, sure, my pleasure. And I'll keep my ear to the ground and see what I can find out or hear, and official or unofficial, it's this is a talk show, so that's what we're doing. We're talking. So okay,
Exactly. Okay, Wayne, thanks a lot.
all right, thanks.
Okay, now just a quick reminder that we are looking for your comments. So just log in, go through the process. It'll all be there on YouTube, and we welcome your comments, and we are going to feature your comments. And by all means, this is your opportunity to have your say. This is part of what the show is about. So if you have a comment or a question, by all means, please post them. I'll be watching and be bringing them up as well. One other thing too, Eddie is not here this week, and I'd be remiss in just letting you know that he will return next week. He's away, and I believe he's probably on his way to the airport to catch where he is an early morning flight to begin the journey home. So he'll be here next week. Now, last night was the first and only debate involving the vice presidential candidates in the U.S. election campaign. Republican J.D. Vance and Democrat Tim Walz squared off over a variety of issues, including the economy, housing, and immigration. Off the top, the first question centered on the growing conflict in the Mideast and the type of leadership required to deal with that explosive situation.
But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago. A nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance.
We have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially, launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world.
So, Vance also went on to say at one point in that particular back and forth that Donald Trump was the only U.S. president without a war during his term. So when you think about it, you think about the fact that so many high-ranking officials in Trump's own group in the White House said that he wasn't fit to be near the White House, let alone in the White House. It really gives you pause for thought. There's no question about it. And if you've been watching him prior to Biden deciding to withdraw from the race, there was a lot of talk in the media and elsewhere about Biden and his age and his cognitive abilities. He's gone. Trump is now the oldest, 78, I believe. And when you watch him at some of his rallies, or you follow him, if you happen to be following him on his Truth Social platform, and watch some of the rants that he goes on, somebody out there has to be questioning his cognitive abilities as well. But for whatever reason, the mainstream media does not seem to be following that aspect of the candidate as much as they did when Biden was in the running at the time. And I find that somewhat strange. Anyway, the VP candidates also tackled dealing with environmental concerns and the impact on the economy.
Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly, Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. And I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States of America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years.
Senator.
Natural gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse by the climate.
Senator, your time is up.
That turned out to be, for me anyway, a rather interesting discussion overall, because it brought in how over the years a lot of jobs have gone offshore. And where Walz was saying that by working on environmentally friendly kinds of projects, that is creating clean types of jobs, and that as time goes on, the U.S. will be able to bring back more of that manufacturing and basically bring more of those jobs home to the United States. And finally, with Donald Trump suggesting he will again contest the outcome of next month's vote if he doesn't win, as he did in 2020, Vance was challenged as to whether he was prepared to accept the outcome of this year's election.
It's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We are going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time. And if we want to say that we need to respect the results of the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
This is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
Look, what I do know is I see a candidate out there who refused, and now again, and this, I'm pretty shocked by this. He lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not anything anywhere other than in Donald Trump's world. Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is, where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what we would do. So America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
That was one of the zingers that Walz delivered last night during the debate, in my estimation. Really put some food for thought on the table, for sure. Overall, the debate, it was actually, if you're a political junkie, it was a good debate. It was interesting to watch. Certainly, I think it was better than the Harris-Trump debate, because, again, you had Donald Trump kind of rambling on here and there, and focusing on one thing and one thing only, really, more than anything else, and that was the whole immigration issue. Here, they did get in depth in a number of other issues. The couple that I picked here tonight, I thought were kind of interesting and didn't get a lot of play over some of the other issues, such as abortion rights. But I found that going into the debate, Tim Walz apparently told Kamala Harris, when she called him and asked him to be her running mate, that he wasn't a great debater. And when the show first opened, you could see he was a little bit nervous, but he quickly got his feet under him, and he was making notes and then coming back and picking up on different things that Vance was saying. And as the debate went on, and at the end, I think that he had found his stride without any real problems. Vance, on the other hand, came across really smooth. I found that he seemed to be extremely well prepared, whether when you get into the fact checking, how truthful some of the information he was sharing was, will will remain to be seen. But overall, I think that he took a step out in front of Waltz, at least initially, until Waltz seemed to get his stride, and then it was, I felt, pretty much equal from there on, although Tim Waltz did manage to land a couple of good punches, including that last one about signing off on the results of the election if the need arose. So that's apparently going to be the only U.S. presidential debate, and usually these sorts of debates, the VP debates, don't really carry a lot of weight, but it's some of the pundits are expecting a bit of a bounce following this one because of the way the two candidates handled themselves. So it remains to be seen where it's going to go. One thing that is very clear as far as any further debates are concerned, and that is that Donald Trump has made it very clear that he wants nothing to do with another debate. He says voting has already started in a number of the states, early voting, and that another debate would serve no useful purpose, at least for him as he sees it. So here at home, the Trudeau Liberals have survived another non-confidence motion tabled by the Conservatives. Both the NDP and the Bloc sided with the government to easily defeat the motion. Opposition leader Pierre Poilievre isn't giving up on trying to force an early, what he terms, carbon tax election, though. Meantime, Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet is willing to continue to support the Liberals until the end of the month if they support his party's bill that would see seniors between the ages of 65 and 74 receive a 10% increase in their old age security payments to match what those 75 and over receive. Now, it's estimated the increase would cost about $16 billion over 5 years, and that price tag has a number of MPs concerned, which I find interesting. We've spent billions of dollars on other things, and yes, we do have an aging population. However, there have been moves to try and increase the younger base of the population, and a lot of that's been through immigration policies, some of which perhaps went too far too fast, leading to a number of issues, including the housing issue in this country. Having said that, there's an interesting twist that's coming out of this today as well, and that is that the Liberals voted against the Bloc's motion on this particular bill, and it's a bill that the Bloc presented, and this was their opposition day, and it's probably the last opposition day they get where they can do this for some time. And what they were trying to do was, and this is something that even I wasn't aware of, but it's a royal recommendation. They were trying to get a royal recommendation to move this bill forward at some point, and the Liberals voted against it. However, Blanchet is saying you still have until the end of the month. That's the deadline. The line that he's drawn in the sand is the end of October to move on this bill in particular. And he's framing it as discriminatory in nature, in the fact that the government gave a 10% raise to seniors 75 and over on their old age security pension, and did not include seniors between 65 and 74. And as much as some people who know me may find this a little bit hard to believe, I have to agree with them on that one. If you're going to give seniors And God knows that as seniors, we're still paying taxes. And then sometimes it seems like we're paying as much as what we did when we were working, but we are still paying taxes. And a lot of us, because our health is much better now and we have, yes, a longer lifespan, we are still contributing in a lot of ways to society in this country, whether it's serving on various committees, volunteering, mentorship programs. Seniors are much more mobile now, and they are also still very much aware and lively and contributing to various aspects of the social fabric of this country, in addition to still paying taxes. So to me, it was rather discriminatory, and to have MPs concerned about the price tag, the $10 billion over 5 years, on top of the almost $80 billion now for other seniors' benefits. Start looking at some of the other programs and things that they have been funding over the years, and the money that has been wasted over the years as well. So I have a hard time buying into that particular argument, the concern of the $10 billion price tag. That should have been built into the original program. And instead of discriminating against a younger group of seniors, all seniors should have been entitled to that. That's the way I see it. Meantime, the childish and at times downright nasty behavior of MPs during question period in the Commons continues as well this week, watching the House Speaker and his deputies with their hands full over the past couple of days trying to maintain order and a sense of decorum during question period in the House of Commons. It's getting downright nasty in a lot of ways. Really very nasty, with insults and names being hurled back and forth across the floor. I don't get it. That's not what Canadians want to see from their elected representatives. Total lack of respect for the House, for the institution, and for the voters they serve. I'm just at a loss for words at the way this has been going, and it's an embarrassment not only to us as Canadians and voters, it's an embarrassment to our country, because these sorts of things now are available on the internet, and some of the antics have ended up on newscasts elsewhere in the world. It's just been insane. Somewhere the light has to go on, and some kind of level of respect and maturity has to come back into the House of Commons, and especially during question period. And that's a wrap for tonight. Remember to like and subscribe to our channel. My thanks to my brother Wayne for updating us on the NB election campaign. And thank you for tuning in tonight and or watching the show later on our YouTube channel and YouTube podcasts. Night Talk returns in 7 days. Good night.